Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to introduce Mr. Glenn Sacco, who is our agricultural, but I like to say ornamental specialist for our County of Hawaii R&D department. We depend on him a lot for our industry, and we get a lot of help from Glenn. So without further ado, Mr. Sacco, you have the floor.
Thank you, Eric. Made me speechless when you introduced me like that. As Eric mentioned, I'm with the County of Hawaii. I'm with the Department of Research and Development, working with the agricultural industries. So I have the pleasure of serving as the moderator for this Breeders and Growers Forum today. So the process will be like this. I'll be introducing the speakers, and they will have an opportunity to talk about their business or their research or other projects that may concern ornamental plants. After we've gone through these 12 speakers, we will then have an opportunity for all of you to ask questions of these speakers. And I'll be starting with my left here. So we're going to start off. I have the pleasure of introducing John Tanoy. John is the production manager of Greenpoint Nurseries. His industry involvement includes serving as the current president of the Orchid Growers of Hawaii, which is also known as OGO. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in horticulture at the University of Hawaii at Hilo from the College of Agriculture, Forestry, and Natural Resource Management. He also graduated from the Agricultural Leadership Foundation of Hawaii as part of the 16th class. John, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Am I giving welcome everybody, aloha. My name is John Tanoy. As Mr. Sacco introduced me, generation farmer with our family operation, Greenpoint Nurseries. And thanks for those that came to visit today. We're here today to create this relationship with everybody, designers, other growers, and industry-like people. Looking forward to all the questions that we have today.
Thank you, John. Next, we have Warren Watanabe, all the way from Maui. Warren is the executive director of the Maui County Farm Bureau, and he is born and raised on a family farm in Kula, Maui, where they were growing flowers and vegetables. He has a degree in horticultural sciences from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Warren has held numerous positions in government boards and agricultural industry organizations. He currently represents the Hawaii Farm Bureau on the Hawaii Drought Council, board vice chair for the Agribusiness Development Corporation. He's the chair for the Kula Elementary Community Advisory Council and is a member of the Department of Education's Natural Resources Career Technical Education Advisory Council. Warren, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I want to make full disclosure. I was asked to be on this panel, but I was a vegetable grower. But some brief history about the farm. My parents did grow flowers. They were one of the original, I don't know, some of you may remember carnation lays, the double carnation lays. They grew the carnation lay heads. Then we transitioned to vegetables. As previously stated, I was a third generation farmer up in Kula, and I think this is a time where everybody needs to look. And for Farm Bureau, one of the things I want to stress is that we support all types of agriculture production. We support organic, we support our conventional farmers, and we support the biotech industry. And I think it's important for Farm Bureau also is that we support all types. We support the flower growers, the nurseries, vegetable growers, the ranchers, the seed industry. And I think it's important for Hawaii as we move forward that we all work together. At times the industry kind of tends to split among different sectors. But in order for agriculture to grow and to even meet the Governor Ige's challenge, and we are going to have a new administration, I think to continue that path, everyone involved in agriculture needs to work together. And that's the only way Hawaii will move forward. Thank you.
Now we have Tong Ting Neo. Neil, I'm sorry. Neil, as he likes to be called, is the general manager for Greenpoint Nurseries. He's the president of the Hawaii Tropical Flower Council, also called HTFC, and serves on the Orchid Growers of Hawaii's board. Neil is also the orchid director for HFNA and serves as chair of the Transportation Committee and co-chair of the Research and Development Committee. Excuse me. Neil, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Glenn. So, aloha, everyone. I think I met all you guys, right, this morning. Yeah, thank you for coming again to Hawaii, Hilo. So, I mentioned a little bit, this year we have a lot of challenges. First is a few years ago, we had the pandemic, in Hawaii, for us flower growers, we are asked to close, actually, by the governor, but we didn't do it. We secretly operate underground. Yeah. So, and now this year, we have high inflation, the war going on and everything. It does affect everyone's business, actually, not only mine. I think all growers, all businesses. It's challenging for us doing business in Hawaii. So, but just stay positive, be strong. Yeah, let's move ahead. Like Warren say, yeah, we have to work together. Yeah, work together. That's how we can overcome all our problems, right? Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Neil, for those encouraging words. Christian Ingoes. Christian is the owner of Daisy Duke's Farm. Okay, a 15-acre farm located in Papaloa, Hawaii. In 2019, she began selling temperate flowers, both wholesale and retail. Recently, she was featured twice in the Cut Flower Quarterly, which is a quarterly publication for the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. Christian is a farmer florist who loves to use her blooms to create weddings for brides and spread her love of flowers throughout the islands. Christian, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I think I sell flowers to about half of you, so if I don't already, please just DM me and I'll make sure to get you on the list as well. I'm really thankful and honored to be a part of this group of individuals with so much history in Hawaii. I moved here in 1999. I went to UH Hilo. My son was born at the Hilo Hospital. I love tropical flowers, but I also always missed flowers from the mainland as well. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I started growing a little bit on our farm. I only have animals there at the time, and I had some fruit trees, so I thought, why not? And then it kind of exploded from there. Actually, Ainahua Florals was the first to order flowers from me, yeah, which was really cool. And then it just spread from there, and it is really, really amazing. What's really cool is that, like you mentioned, that I grow the flowers, but I also use them. And so I understand what it's like where I cut them and how I'm delivering them. I also ship them to other islands. We've shipped to every island at this point. And so I'll leave extra stuff on the stem so you can cut off little side things and use it for a haku or something. And versus if you get something shipped in, a lot of times, it'll be so stripped down that you can only use that stem, and there's just a lot of waste. So I understand both sides. And in addition, I guess I was speaking with a few people earlier. I'm also a first grade teacher in Waimea, and I also teach at the school garden there. So I have that aspect of teaching and sharing and knowledge and information. And in addition, I love cocktails with flowers in them and using them to make things. And so we sell edible flowers as well all over the island. And it's so cool because so many of you here I've sold flowers to, and it's just really cool to have that connection. And we're really appreciative to be here.
Thank you, Christian. Gordon Inoue. He is a Big Island farmer, businessman, and entrepreneur. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering from the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, and he later qualified for his third assistant license and earned an MBA from St. Mary's College. Gordon is a member of HFNA's marketing committee and is a board member and treasurer for SHAC. Gordon, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Glenn. Unfortunately, I think I'm being overexposed here, but I had the good fortune of being before you this morning, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I hope that it's become worthwhile with you. I'm going to talk very briefly about a story. Obviously, I'm a multi-generational farmer. My grandfather on my father's side came over on the boat, and of course, he was in agriculture. He was a cane cutter in the old plantation days. And then, of course, my father was a contractor, and he was always loved flowers and plants. One of the jobs was to build a greenhouse for a cymbidium grower here in Hilo. After he completed the greenhouse, the owner offered to pay him in plants, partially in plants, instead of fully in cash. So of course, he took some of these plants, and we all of a sudden became part of the agricultural community here. Of course, when I was growing up, I hated it because, you know, part-time farmers, you go home from school, and what do you have to do? You got to repot plants, you know, and you got to haul them around. And, you know, it was one of those things that I told myself, I'm never going to do this in my life. But of course, I went away, had a different career in both in engineering and as a ship's officer for many years, and I served in the Merchant Marine for a number of years after that. I got my master's degree. I worked on Wall Street and in Market Street in San Francisco. But the yearning and the call of Hawaii was always there. And back in 1984, when my dad retired, my brother recruited me to come back to Hawaii to get involved with the family business. He only had to ask me once, and I was on the plane coming back here, and I've been deeply involved in agriculture ever since. And I think, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, my training in engineering, you know, is applicable in agriculture, and my knowledge in business is very applicable in terms of being able to create and operate modern businesses. So it's been really a pleasure being able to work with so many fine people here in Hawaii and in our industry to do our best to further the industry. And I welcome you all here, and thank you for being part of this effort. Mahalo.
Thank you, Gordon. I can tell when you were recounting those old stories, everybody's head was going like this. Yeah, yeah. We didn't want to do it when we were growing up, but now we're here. Next, we have David Shigi. David is a world-class bromeliad hybridizer. His first hybrid was the Guasmania lingulata, Puna Gold, first yellow lingulata ever bred. He continued his breeding work and now has thousands of bromeliads, of which many are his hybrids, and they have sold nationally and internationally. David always believed the secrets to success is persistence, patience, passion, and expertise. I guess patience would help too. So David, thank you for being here.
Thank you. You know, it's interesting what Gordon was saying about, you know, I didn't want to do that. I'm originally from Oahu. I moved there, you know, in 1979. But my first job was whenever I give a talk at a conference or something in the mainland or in wherever, I tell them about, I once had I worked for the biggest bromeliad nursery in the world. And they were surprised, the biggest one in the world? Yeah, but I hated it. So, well, where did you work? I worked for Dole and Libby Cannery. I had to clean the Janeco machines, and I had to, you know, sugar. Pineapple has a lot of sugar, so it ferments easily, so I can't stand the smell of pineapple, which is a bromeliad, of course. But look at today, I'm growing thousands of stinking pineapples. So anyway, on our move to the Big Island, my wife and I, we had our daughter was only 1 year old. But today, we started our nursery in Pahoa, which actually is my roots. My grandparents started a store in 1920 in Pahoa town. They came from Yamaguchi-ken in Japan. So I always wanted to go back to my dad's hometown. He went into the 442nd, got wounded, and he went back to Pahoa, and it was too slow for him, so he moved to Oahu. But I loved the Big Island, so I dragged my wife to Pahoa, cultural shock because my wife lived all over the world, and so that first year was tough for her. But we started a nursery there. I had a dream that bromeliads was something that was hard to attain, hard to get because of the pineapple industry. So you have to quarantine for a year, and if you can get quarantine space. So I told myself, that's the plant I'm gonna grow because it's hard to get. So I started hybridizing in the late 70s and moved to the Big Island and continued to hybridize. And that time, no one teaches you how to hybridize, so you have to, I kept a log and to see when the plant will be receptive to pollen and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So we started in Pahoa, and as the years went on, we moved to Hilo. So I started off, I told my daughter, who's now taking over my business, that Daddy started off with 6 varieties of bromeliads. We went up to over 3,000 varieties from that time to now. I don't keep all of them. I've made about probably over 500 crosses. I registered in Australia about 300. And now I pass the reins off to my daughter, who's now doing the hybridization. And she's diligent about it. Like, for me, I wear many hats. I cook, I play music, I'm an artist like my wife, and I'm a social animal. So my daughter is more focused. So now I finally passed the reins to her, and met a lot of good people. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. Now we're going to move on to our breeders and researchers. Hannah Lutgen has a bachelor's degree in sustainable horticulture and is the Floriculture and Landscape Junior Extension Agent from Maui. Her program focuses on integrated pest and disease management, soil and plant health, and variety trailing in support of the floriculture and landscape industries statewide. Hannah?
Aloha, everyone. It's great to be here today. I see a few familiar faces, but I see a lot of new faces, which is very exciting, and I hope to get to speak to everyone. Like Glenn said, my name is Hannah. I'm in Maui, and I'm here to listen and help growers and florists. So whether it's trialing or testing or finding new plant material, or finding new pest management tactics, maybe some kind of sanitation or testing a pesticide or fungicide, I'm here to help. I did just want to speak briefly about a eucalyptus project the extension, the UH-Manoa faculty are working on. So over by Miss Judy is a QR code, but basically we're just trying to gather feedback. What are your thoughts about eucalyptus foliage? Are you interested in growing it? And if so, what are some of your most desirable varieties? If you could please fill that out. It's a brief survey. We'd really appreciate it because, again, we're just trying to find out what would work best for everyone. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Dr. Joanna Blasey is the Ornamental Entomology Extension Specialist at HFNA located in Hawaii County. She received her PhD in entomology from the University of California, Davis. Her research focuses on plant-insect interactions to support the development of sustainable integrated pest management strategies. Some of her current work includes developing resistant management strategies for the control of thrips and screening chemical efficacy trials. Dr. Blasey.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As Glenn mentioned, I'm the entomologist for HFNA, so I help a lot of the growers with their pest problems, specifically their insect issues. And as you can imagine, with gas and fuel prices rising and climate change, those things are growing. If any of the florists or growers have ever had a shipment intercepted because of pests, that's something we focus on as well. We want to make sure we're preventing new pests from coming into the state, especially given the climate here, they just proliferate. And so we can continue to have healthy industry for all you florists and for the growers here. So that's really my job. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Daisy. Dr. Orville Baldos is an assistant researcher in sustainable ornamental production at CTAHR. His research interests include native Hawaiian plant materials development for landscape and ornamental use, screening and selection of non-invasive ornamental species, and development of sustainable ornamental plant production and landscape management practices. Dr. Baldos, thank you for being here.
All right, thanks for inviting me, and thank you all for attending this forum. So, as Glenn mentioned, my research focuses on native Hawaiian plants. One of the main reasons why I kind of focus my program on that one is, we're importing plants from everywhere in the world, and we haven't had a chance to look at what's here and what might work in an ornamental sense or in a floriculture sense. So I wanted to look at that resource. Maybe we can tap on that, and because most of these plants are only found here, then we'll probably have an advantage over other places. So so that's one of the reasons. And also since Hawaii is also the invasive species capital of the world, we wanted to just utilize whatever is here, being native, and also looking at plants that don't spread like introducing plants here that won't spread and wreak havoc in our ecosystem. So that's basically my interest, and I'm also interested in other aspects of ornamental production. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm also interested in listening in terms of what you guys want.
Thank you, Dr. Baldos. Russell Galanti is the Junior Extension Agent for Ornamental Crops and Landscape Industries for Hawaii County and Oahu. He received his master's degree from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Russell is currently working on projects related to pests and diseases in the green industry, new temperate cut flower trials, lowland protea variety releases, and new tree variety releases. Russell, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Glenn. Hi. I'm Russell Galanti. I think I want to touch, since we're all saying something, on what extension is. So Eric talked a little bit about it in our first talk with Gordon, but I kind of wanted to emphasize what we do. We're basically the interface between the university's research and resources and the industry that we're serving. We assess needs, and we try to resolve those needs either through direct consultation or doing research or outreach. So James, Hannah, Joanna, and I, and then indirectly Tessie, Orville, and all the researchers are working to resolve pretty much whatever issues we assess. For example, I'm working on virus management in ginger, pest and disease management in orchid species, and new variety trialing. So Glenn touched on some of that stuff: protea, temperate crops, eucalyptus, really whatever you need. So extension is very important, and we really like to work with the industry, so thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Dr. James Keach is the Assistant Extension Agent for Ornamental Crops and the Master Gardener Coordinator for CTAHR in Kauai. He is a plant breeder and has worked with ornamental and edible crops. He is currently working to expand the range of plants and new cultivars available to the ornamental community. Dr. Keach.
Thanks, Glenn, and thanks everyone here for coming today. Tough acts to follow, but as Glenn said, I mostly am interested in introducing new material, kind of as Orville had been discussing, but also on Kauai we have a huge collection of older ornamental plantings that we're currently trying to assess and see what the interest is from florists, from growers, and then also once we kind of figure out those priorities, getting those propagated and getting those out to more folks so that we can kind of continue to have that edge. We're hoping in the next few years to kind of get them going. It's right now just waiting on stuff in the greenhouse, but I'm really excited to be both bringing back some old favorites and also hopefully introducing some new things. I also work a lot with orchids, just my background's in that, and so I'm happy to talk along with way more distinguished orchid experts here. I'm happy to answer some questions. Along those lines, commercial growers, we're going to be sending out a survey on orchid diseases in the near future. We don't have the link with us right now, but we'll have it soon, so keep an eye out, watch this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Keach. Finally, we have Dr. Teresita Amore. Dr. Amore is an associate researcher in the Department of Tropical Plant and Soil Sciences at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, where she works in various capacities in the Anthurium and Dendrobium breeding program since 1985. She received her master's and PhD in horticulture from the University of Hawaii at Manoa under Dr. Haruyuki Kamemoto. She is the breeder that is helping to keep our Anthurium and orchid industries at the front line and on this international basis. So, Dr. Amore, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Glenn, for that introduction. Aloha, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Some thoughts. When Glenn mentioned that I've been working at the University of Hawaii since 1985, what I'd like to share is, although you might think I'm the face of the breeding program, it really takes a village to develop a variety. So when I look around the room, it warms my heart to see fellow researchers who've helped us. In fact, some of the people on the panel have been with us in the program. And they haven't, you may not know that they really help us in the program in various capacities. So fellow researchers like John Suzuki over there, who deals with the more basic aspects of plant biology. Joanne Imamura has been very helpful to our program. In fact, she has been with the program even before I joined the program. So between the two of us, we tried to piece institutional memory because the Orchid and Anthurium program at the University of Hawaii really started in 1950 with Dr. Haruyuki Kamemoto, and I was his last student. And as I was learning more about floriculture, even before I came to Hawaii, there's a Hawaii link because I received my undergraduate degree from the University of the Philippines, where my professor was mentored by Dr. Yoneo Sagawa at the University of Hawaii, who did many studies on micropropagation or tissue culture. So when you look at our program, it's like a fabric where there are many people woven in the production of a new hybrid. I also want to thank our cooperators. You went to see them. We cooperate with Greenpoint Nurseries and Pacific Floral Exchange. Floral Resources also in the past, which has become part of the Pacific Floral Exchange family. So when I look around and when you see the varieties that you work with, the designers work with, there's a lot of hands that really helped move the product along and to be the product that it is. So what I want to hear, or what we want to achieve this afternoon, is to hear what you think would be useful characteristics. What are your wish lists? We may not be able to accomplish everything, but we just want to hear what do you have in mind that's something that the designers want to work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amore. Okay, now is the time when we are going to open it up for questions and answers. So I know all of you have had some burning questions you wanted to ask. And if so, please raise your hand and Kathleen will get you the microphone so you can, so we can hear your interesting questions. Are there any questions from the floor? Yes. There's one right there.
My first question is for Ms. Watanabe. I was curious and maybe you don't know, what inspired your family to move from carnation production to food production? Because now we don't have any carnation growers.
Okay, I think many of you are aware the carnation industry on Maui, Kula Maui, we ran into disease problems and they couldn't overcome it. And the way my mom put it to me was that the reason why they went to vegetables is I'm the youngest of 6. And my parents were told, if you're going to send 6 kids to college, you need to go vegetables. So it was basically economics. And just a bit, again, some history on my farm. My grandfather started the farm in 1939. And I shut it down after about 73 years. And I think, it really shows one of the problems with Hawaii agriculture. I think you're all familiar with Dean Okimoto at Nalo Farms. He shut down his farm. We had Richard Ha on this island shut down his operation. And I think, I always tell people and the community, it's fine that you say you support agriculture. But the bottom line is, how far are you going to take that step to help the industry? The industry, quite frankly, in my opinion, is struggling right now. On Maui, we have the drought. We have the axis deer issue. And many of the farmers and ranchers are really struggling just to survive right now. And so, the state of Hawaii and the counties need to work together and really make agriculture a higher priority. We've had governors that say they support agriculture. We have legislators that say they support agriculture. We have a congressional delegation on the federal level. But it's getting the resource to our producers. And I think there's somehow a gap in that process. I work with our farmers and ranchers, and they say, it's like nobody's listening to them. And so, everybody, the community needs to get behind the movement of moving Hawaii agriculture and making it a viable industry.
Thank you, Warren. Do we have another question for our panel here?
We hear a lot about emphasis on breeding of anthuriums varieties. Is there anything going on in the dendrobium side beyond the UH varieties that we currently have on the market? Are we exploring different colors? Is there any work being done on more UH varieties of dendrobiums?
So I'll answer on behalf of the breeders group. We received funding recently to, first build up our orchid breeding plants, because over the past 2 years, let me backtrack. Over the past, I think, 3 years, our orchid house had issues with wind damage, so we lost a roof. And last year we had another issue with another orchid house where we have, so our breeding materials, our breeding plants were exposed to the elements, so they're not doing as well. However, with this funding that we're receiving, we're trying to revive the parent materials, and we do want to continue on and develop more colors, hopefully. But our first goal is to get the plants healthy so that we can develop more colors. We hear the growers saying they want bigger sizes also. So in terms of colors, we had some work that was done earlier, but the UH breeding program has traditionally focused on seed propagated varieties, but now for the other colors, we would have had to propagate them using tissue culture. So with a lack of tissue culture facilities in the state, it becomes problematic too. So that part of the capacity building needs to be addressed as well. But yes, we are trying to breed more varieties. At one point, there was, maybe it was almost 20 years ago, if I might say, there was some studies on doing genetic modification for flower color, but not much has been done since then. And besides, we are aware of some pushback about genetically modified flowers. But we're trying to do new colors also. That's part always of our breeding program. But we're trying to focus using more classical breeding techniques so there won't be pushback using genetically modified for orchids for color. Besides, genetic modification for color takes really long time. I was in Okinawa when they unveiled the first blue the Rhytinopsis, well, it's a Phalaenopsis now, under plexiglass, but it looked purple. So it wasn't really, so breeding for colors can be difficult. Let me put it that way. That's the bottom line.
What's the state of breeding outside of Hawaii?
So many of y'all know I worked in Singapore before I moved back to Hawaii, and I was going to say it was interesting over there to see what we think of as much, much older varieties of orchids, things like Dendrobium Jacqueline concert, having a really high value in Singapore from a breeding point of view, but also still as a cut flower. I worked with one breeder over there who said he bought a small plant of Jacqueline concert for $5,000. And then a plant of Vanda Nellie Morley, something I see in people's backyards here, for $8,000. So, and Singapore, US dollars, not quite the same, but that's still several $1,000s for each of those. So there's still a lot of interest, I think, worldwide in what Hawaii has developed in the past and also what's being developed now. I do think what we see is a lot of the breeding work moving to other countries, specifically Thailand, where labor is cheaper and they have a lot of native species where they can kind of select new forms. But also Taiwan. Taiwan has really, as a country, put funding into their public breeding programs. There's a whole range of orchids that all start with KDARES, and it's because they were developed at the Kaohsiung District Agricultural Research and Extension Station. And that sort of public support, I mean, there's just incredible stuff coming out regularly. We've talked internally at the university about breeding. Breeding is one of those things, and Dr. Amore can give you more accurate timelines, that the lead time on it is just really long. So if you want to fund a breeding program, you kind of need to fund it immediately to get results 10 to 15 years later sometimes. And it depends on the crop a little bit. I think anthuriums are around that range, orchids too. One thing I will say is there is a little bit of hobbyist breeding and kind of smaller commercial growers here. I don't think many of them are geared towards cut flowers. They're more potted plant and high value kind of collectors. But we're, as a state, internationally famous for our Lautoria dendrobiums, which are kind of a very different, almost more geometric shape. Tend to have shorter stems, so not as easy to use in a cut production system. But H&R orchids over in Waimanalo, I mean, when I was in Singapore, people brought it up all the time as like the orchid place that they kind of fantasized about visiting. So I think there's some real opportunities for collaboration. I would say if breeding is something that's of interest to folks, and having new varieties that are produced locally, I think that's a really good thing to vocalize when you're talking with administration at the university or also with the legislature. I don't think I'm allowed to tell you a lobby as, in my public role here, but read between the lines for that, I guess, in that it's one of those things that we keep saying should be done and needed to be done 10, 15, 20 years ago. but the sooner we can get administration to appreciate that there's a need for these things, the sooner they can fund a position and then actually get some funds and labor put to that. So we're hopeful, but it's playing catch up at this point, I think.
That was very interesting questions. Are there any others from the floor?
I guess this is for Russell. You mentioned something about the virus that's really affecting the red ginger and the pink ginger and certain other varieties. What's going on with that at this point? Are there products being developed to help stop the virus, or I guess I'm just curious.
Thanks for your question. So there are a suite of viruses that we've recently found that are infecting red ginger, pink ginger, anything in the Alpinia purpurata varieties of ginger. So your typical reds and pinks. A lot of times you're going to see these symptoms. They're pretty much ubiquitous across the state. We found nearly every virus on nearly every island that we assessed them. So since 2019, I've been doing this research where we've tried to characterize the viruses, tried to survey where they're at. I went and met James on Kauai, Hannah on Maui, and I did Big Island and Oahu myself. We ended up discovering 6 viruses. 3 we already knew infected red ginger, and they infect other plants as well. So the banana bract mosaic virus, canna yellow mottle virus, and we have also banana streak virus. So two also infect bananas. 1 infects canna. Canna is another flowering plant. You can't really use it that well for a cut flower because it doesn't last very long. We found 2 new viruses, completely new to science even. So we had never even known of these viruses. One's an amplovirus and one's a nucleorhabdovirus. And we named them both after ginger, Alpinia viruses. So we kind of have this idea of what the spread of these viruses are across the state. Quarantine is not happening because they're everywhere. We do know that they're mainly spread through vegetative propagation. So anytime that you take a keiki or you cut up a mature plant, if it's virused, and almost all of them are, you're spreading that virus. So our solution in the immediate is to try to produce virus-free ginger plants. So we found some clean gingers that we are calling cleaner gingers because we don't know if they have other viruses we haven't identified. Trying to ID viruses that you don't know exist is really hard. You have to run through all the DNA that you get after sampling the plants. And so there may be some that we don't know of, but we feel like we've kind of got a good idea of what's there. So we found some clean plants. We are hopefully getting some money from legislation this year to tissue culture those plants and mass produce virus-free plants. If you start virus-free, you're going to stay virus-free for a good period of time, as long as you aren't infecting those plants mechanically by passing the viruses on through shears that have recently clipped virus plants. They're also spread by insects. So we'll have to do, as long as we get enough money, some work on how to prevent virus spread by insects. So typically it's aphids, mealybugs. Some of them might be spread by plant hoppers. It's going to be impossible to keep these insects out of your fields. So the best thing to do is start clean and try to prevent through not mechanically infecting your plants. So in short, produce virus-free plants, plant them in farms, and grow virus-free for as long as possible. Rinse and repeat.
Are you finding it in any other ginger species like the beehives or torch ginger? Are they crossing over, or are they just mainly in Alpinia?
So we have not seen it in even other Alpinia species. So Alpinia xerumbet, we have not seen these viruses in. We haven't seen it in heliconia. I tested some heliconia that looked like they might have had virus symptoms. They were right next to them. They didn't. We did find 1 torch ginger that had the nucleorhabdovirus. So it had infected a torch ginger in Waimanalo. So the potential is there for at least the nucleorhabdovirus to infect at least 1 other ginger genus. It seems to have less of an effect and not be as easily spread to the jungle series. We didn't find it as much in Jungle King and Jungle Queen, we also saw that those plants tended to be more vigorous than the regular Alpinia purpurata, but all of that is strictly anecdotal. We didn't do any research to determine whether or not that was actually true. It was just from observations that we saw that they tended to be more vigorous than straight Alpinia purpurata. And the same is true for the Tahitian gingers. Yeah.
Is it the same virus affecting the tea?
No, no, that's T ring spot virus. But they're similar in that they believe the T ring spot virus has been spread also pretty much mechanically. And so a recent research, a project was to produce virus-free tea plants for the industry. But they didn't produce as many as they need, and they're selling them at too high of a price. So we're hoping that we'll get enough money that we can just mass produce plenty of free plants and get them out there, because you can't produce ginger virus-free if you're having to buy them $5 a plant or something like that. You won't be able to put a field in. Yeah.
Is there a chance of using seed propagation as well for Alpinia?
So for Alpinia, we don't really have enough seed lot to do that. You don't see seeds being produced a lot in those Alpinia purpurata. So I think we don't know whether or not they're seed transmissible. We haven't done that work because we didn't see that as a viable option for mass producing plants. We really thought tissue culture was going to be the way to go, and we're hoping that you're going to take that over, Mark, when the time comes. Mark's an expert at tissue culture, or getting there. Yeah. And not all of the viruses are necessarily associated with the decline symptoms, so it also depends on which viruses you have. So you can live with some of these, well, the gingers can live with some of these viruses and still be very productive. In fact, we think some of the viruses are what give them some of their candy striping. Yeah.
It's like the tulip.
Yeah, like the tulip crisis. So specialty tulips were virused. Specialty gingers might be virused. I don't want to say that and ruin somebody's career as a specialty ginger grower. So.
Thank you, Russell.
Yes.
Let's see. Welcome. Oh, there's another question here.
Christian, how have you found growing temperates in a more tropical climate to be?
It's actually not that hard. And I think it's really not at all. It's a completely under-marketed industry in the Hawaiian Islands. I mean, you know my story. I've more than doubled every year, and I still can't keep up with the demand, not even close. So it's awesome. You know, financially, it's been very successful from a business perspective. But what I have found is that the more I leave everything alone and the more I kind of go with my gut, the better it is. And also really honing in on certain crops and growing a lot of them, and especially in the shades that we know that is needed in weddings and events, has been the go-to. We've had this drought. Our farm has had this massive drought for the last 6 to 8 weeks. I live off the grid, and I shared with some people that we've invested about $50,000 in the last 6 months on our farm, believe it or not, and I'm just a little tiny, teeny flower grower. And even with that, we did not put in irrigation out in the open because we always get so much rain. I mean, we're right by Hilo, the rainiest city in the United States. And so I'm willing to gamble. I just roll the dice and kind of go with it. And I did not hand water my dahlia field of about 4,000 plants because I wanted to see. I keep pushing it. I keep pushing the envelope. And that's why I've been, asked by national publications to share what I'm learning here, because we're growing dahlias 365 days a year. They may not look like the summer dahlias, but they're still dahlias. Like a cafe au lait dahlia, wholesale shipped in is over $5 a stem. And I can sell it easy wholesale for $2 a stem. I mean, look at the difference there. They might not be multi-petaled every time, but they're still absolutely gorgeous. So the challenges really are just knowing your pests, knowing what you have, and managing it, and not freaking out. Like right now, like I said, I rolled the dice on my dahlia field. That is a major financial loss. I let it go, and it killed off probably half of my plants. But the tubers are still there and growing, so we're good. And the plants are coming back, and now I know. And so next year, what am I going to do? I'm going to almost double my production this year and have 2 different fields. So if one dries out, I've got the other one to go back and forth on. So,
if I could comment, Christian.
Yeah.
One of the major factors is your selection, your microclimate as to where you live. What elevation is that?
1,300 feet.
Yeah, and again, so it's cooler than than what most of us are growing here closer to sea level. So I had the good fortune of visiting Daisy Duke Farm last year with Russell and Eric Tenoy, and we did a little piece there, and I'm dying to come visit you again.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's fascinating. If anybody has any questions, if we're not able to answer them now, like I said, I'm just thrilled to be on this panel because, I mean, temperates, it's, what wedding doesn't have a temperate flower in it, really? I mean, and carnations, I would love to touch on carnations and why I don't, I've grown carnations, why I don't from a financial perspective, It's just huge industry things that there's so much that can be learned and so much that can be grown. And like I said, we're shipping out to all the islands because there's a demand. It's awesome.
Great. Thank you, Christian. For
Yes.
that.
What's the expected vase life? From the time you cut a zinnia, what can we expect? Like a cafe au lait dahlia maish will actually tell you 48 hours from the time it's cut.
Not true.
So what are you, okay, for the cafe au lait dahlias
Yeah.
grown in Hawaii.
Yes.
Marketed in Hawaii, what, as a florist here, if we're purchasing from you, which we would like to do, what's our time frame? Like, we'd have to, if we had a wedding on Saturday, when do we get it from you?
So I harvest literally every night. I harvest flowers every night and every morning. And so if you're ordering from me, I am the only one that cuts our flowers on our farm, pretty much. And so if you're ordering from me, I will either cut it the night before or the morning, like literally at 4 a.m. with my phone light, the morning of, and I've delivered to several people in this room, and that's what I do. So the trick, though, with a dahlia is whether or not it's been pollinated or not. And that really goes with every flower, right? And especially with temperates. And so a part of my farm with all of my animals, and I have an orchard and a pond full of fish, and I live this utopic kind of Cinderella on my farm, is that I also have beehives. So my bees are out there pollinating. Now, if I can cut you a cafe au lait that hasn't been pollinated yet, it'll last 5-ish days. But the trick of that is what happens to it after I hand it to you? How is it being handled? What kind of water is in the container where it's going? Are you re-snipping it? Zinnias should not go in a cooler. And a lot of people don't know that, and they'll stick a zinnia in a cooler, and they shouldn't go in a cooler. I mean, I did a wedding on Oahu, believe it or not, where I cut all the flowers myself. I took them with me to school in Waimea, hand carried my cafe au laits on the plane, and I boxed everything else for this wedding, and took everything out of the box. It was super hot. Put it in the hotel room. The cafe au laits were completely wilted and dead looking, and I put them in the bathroom, and the next morning, everything bounced back perfectly. It was absolutely amazing. So it depends on pollination and kind of care. And so I would love at some point to share more information about what happens to a flower after I hand it off, and the proper care in going with that. And also for you as a florist to know the product that you're getting and how long it takes. I also order from Mayesh, so it's a fascinating thing because I grow almost everything that I also order at times.
Christian?
Yes.
The take home would be on the zinnias, no refrigeration.
Absolutely not. And also keep it out of the heat as much as possible, cool air, and fresh, clean water in a bucket or a container that is literally scrubbed with hot water. Everything should be crystal clean. Absolutely.
Is it like 5 days on a zinnia?
Again, it depends on what the age of the zinnia when it's cut.
Let's say it was handled properly at the optimum. What's the expectation?
Oh, at least 5 to 7 days. Yeah, absolutely. I did a zinnia test. Was that last summer, I believe, or the summer before? And I cut a bunch of zinnias. I put them on my kitchen counter, so out of direct light, and all I did was change the water every couple days. I put nothing in my water. I don't put anything in the water when I give it to you. It's just, Allison taught me that. Don't put any of that stuff in the water. I just use clean water. And I had multiple zinnias in their last 14 days, and they would have still been great in an arrangement.
Yeah, I did zinnia trialing also on Oahu. We grew them in Pearl City and Waimanalo, and I can attest to that. Almost all of them lasted more than 7 days.
And I ship zinnias to Oahu. I ship zinnias to florists in Oahu, and they're great.
So if in the case with the dahlias, though, when you're packing them in the box, is that going to cause pollination?
No.
Or you're harvesting before the pollen is exposed? Like ball dahlias. You normally won't see in a ball-shaped dahlia, you're not going to see the pollen exposed like a cafe au lait single petal. That's probably going to brush up against each other.
That doesn't matter. It's if I'm cutting a flower that has been pollinated, so you see like the little yellow, if it's like filling out, that's an older flower, and it's also been pollinated. So its life is already shorter. But if I can cut it for you before if I look at the center and I see, you're good to go. So it all depends on who's cutting your flowers for you and at what age the flower is when it's actually being cut. Shipping it to you, I just ship. I do it every week. I just wrap it in paper, and another trick when shipping or harvesting, when you're cutting locally, is to make sure that anything that I ship, I will not ship it unless it's been harvested the night before and in buckets all night long in the dark in water. So it's super ultra mega hydrated before it gets packaged to ship to Honolulu. And I will only ship Hawaiian Air cargo.
Great.
You know, I was asking Christian was she shipped using FedEx, but I was going to say that for those within the state of Hawaii, the HFNA FedEx contract is very, very attractive. We routinely ship a case of 24 potted orchid plants, which weighs about 20 to 24 pounds. We can ship it anywhere in Hawaii for less than $10, FedEx Priority 1. So if you're not a member yet, you better join HFNA and take advantage of the HFNA FedEx rates.
So my question is then, I'm a HFNA member, I get the FedEx rate, but Christian is saying she will only ship on Hawaiian. Is that because of the refrigeration?
So the reason why I ship Hawaiian Air is because we literally can drop it, and if I do priority, within an hour or 2 hours you have it, and you're picking it up right from the airport. And yes, it can also be chilled if you want it to be chilled. And I mean, the turnaround time is just so fast, and you know exactly. I tell you the flight number, and you know exactly when it's there, and to be able to go pick it up. It's been fail-proof. Is the reason why that's what I'm choosing. And I'm shipping flowers I'm already kind of going against the grain. I'm shipping, who's shipping cafe au laits in our island? Or zinnias, snapdragons. Snapdragons ship really great. I mean, there's just all these things that we've been shipping in from Maesh, but nobody, or you're buying it from a local farmer, but nobody's shipping these things in our island. And so my guarantee, and it's not, I mean, it's more expensive than FedEx, but it's guarantee, and I know that my product is going to get there, it's still going to be good.
Oh, great. Wow. So much energy in that discussion.
I've got more.
Oh. Okay, let's
it doesn't stop, I promise.
Let's see if anybody else has any other questions for our producers or researchers.
Do you sell cut bromeliads? On Kauai, we see the plants only, but we can only have so much space, and you gotta wait till next year for the bromeliad to bloom. So, do you ever sell cut bromeliad blossoms?
Yeah, it's secondary for us because basically we sell potted, yeah. And when we do have extras, we do koalau farmers buying and KTA, but it's only with excess, yeah. It may be I used to supply my friend Lois Hiranaga with, she's special person, so I said to her. But other than that, we don't do it. Greenpoint was my biggest customer at one time before the COVID, yeah. So for years I supplied Greenpoint, yeah. Depends, everything is availability, yeah, for us, yeah. Like you came and you saw what I had today, and yeah, we have different varietals, but it's all in excess whenever we have surplus, yeah.
This one is for Gordon.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
In the old days, the small orchid growers would start those beautiful little plants that we saw today at the farms, but they would refuse to sell those orchid plants to us, for us to resell, unless they had had one bloom spike or one cattleya or one vanda, because sometimes the flower doesn't come out perfect, and they didn't want to sell plants that had imperfect flowers. So with buying the flasks, are you finding that you're pretty much guaranteed that every flower spike is going to come out perfect and you're not going to be selling something?
I think you know agriculture well enough that there are no guarantees in life. What we try and do, of course, is grow a healthy orchid plant, free of pests and bugs, which we are successful at most of the time. Occasionally we have some infections or some problems. And of course, if the product gets to the customer, we make it right for the customer. We'll either give them a credit, or if they want to give it back to us, that's fine too. But in most cases, if there's a flaw or a defect, when it gets there, we'll take care of the customer. We had, early on some beautiful oncidium that had really tall spikes, and they're orange, and really unique. Unfortunately, the spikes are about 30 inches tall. And of course, when we ship it across country, a lot of them got damaged. And so, we obviously took care of the customer, and we'll do that for all of our customers. But right now, we found that there's a very popular market for those orange oncidium in the cut flower area. And so right now we're selling them as Orange Delight. They're like a Gower Ramsey, except they're orange, so they're very unique. The first week we brought 90 stems in, and our staff stole 10 of them. The next week, after I made them aware of what we had something new and different, and again, you guys are always looking for something new and different, immediately one salesman sold half of the inventory, came in and took a standing order for 20 stems. And by the time the day was over, they had orders for over 200 stems for only 90 that we had in the inventory. And of course, every week since then, it's been sold out. So again, it's one of those cases where new and different. Sometimes when you're handed lemons, you have to make lemonade. We can't sell it as a potted plant because the spikes are too tall. But in the cut flower area, tall is good, right?
If I can comment on that too, in terms of from flask to the plant and if there's variation, a lot of it depends also on how the tissue culture is being handled. I think it's been brought up before that we don't have a lot of tissue culture facilities in the state compared to what we had 10, 15, 20 years ago. And generally, if you're pushing the generations with tissue culture, umping the hormones and all of that, my understanding is that's when you start to see these mutations arising at a higher rate. You're always going to have some here and there. I think Neo talked about it a little bit when we were at his place. But it's a reason to kind of also know your tissue culture lab if you can, and see how they do it. Because if they're like putting in the effort, like on top of the dividing and all of that, it's going to be a higher quality than if they're somewhere else you don't necessarily know, and they're kind of pushing it with the hormones to like mature faster. There's going to be a higher chance. Sometimes you get a nicer one like that, though. I mean, there's been a few. When Gordon was talking about it, there was one oncidium that the chocolate orchid actually used to have really long stems, and then there was a mutation from tissue culture, and it ended up with shorter, more manageable stems. But cannot guarantee that, right? So.
Okay, great. Any questions? Oh, Russell wants to ask a question?
Would you see any distortion of stems from genetic mutation? I got this one problem where there's grammatophyllum, and as they grow up, some of them are distorting and getting crooked flower stems. We can't figure it out. Would you ever see that?
Yeah, and Tessie might be able to answer this better than I can. I know there's been orchids that there's some sprays that'll also do that, where there's distorting and kind of fusing of different flower parts. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember offhand.
Fasciation?
Fasciation, yeah. But there's also what we call crippling, which is not a good term, but of flowers, typically if they've gone through tissue culture too many times, mm-hmm. or pushed like that, where you'll see fused stems that are fasciated or like distorted kind of stems in that way.
Okay.
And it varies orchid to orchid too. Some orchids just also throw weird off types pretty often, some don't. But yeah, I can't remember offhand, what was do you remember what that one was that was causing all those fused Dendrobium flowers decades and decades ago?
I'm on the job, so I got to ask these kind of questions.
So when you mean fused, like the distance of the flowers along the inflorescence is very tight and it tends to spiral. We've seen that in the Neo-Hawaii parent. So that was our one of our parents in our seed propagated uni-white pearl. So that parent, and it is transmissible. We know some of the offspring will have it at a lower frequency. So that one, it's something genetic. However, sometimes when you, the term is overclone, it's like you get so many plantlets out of the tissue culture process beyond the recommended. What we've seen in the past is what we call fused leaves. So the leaves, the first few growths might look good, but probably by the fourth one, the top leaves will not open up, and so the stems or the flower stems kind of curl up and they won't even come out. So that's usually associated with overcloning. So in some instances, there were some, I think Burana white was one of them. The first ones didn't have that, but the later ones that were sold, maybe by the third or fourth pseudobulb, you'd see that fused leaves. So usually it's associated with overcloning.
Oh, interesting. And so some of these things could be misidentified possibly as phytotoxicity if it's already at somebody who's bought the tissue culture plants and they've grown it out, and by then you don't know whether or not it's been over TC'd or not. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I have 3 questions actually, unrelated. First of all, I'm a newer retailer, and I was wondering if there's a centralized website of flower wholesalers and retailers in Hawaii.
We have a HFNA website, Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association website, which is a grower's website. We also have Neotropica Hawaii, which is another website which has a lot of different information on it. And between the two of them, there's a list of growers that you can find, that produce certain different kinds of flowers. The membership list indicates all of the lists. Lists all of the growers and also lists them by what they grow. So it is available on the Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association website.
Is there a resource to assist with shipping flowers out of off island and out of state, and the proper protocols? I get asked a lot, and I just say no because I don't know how to do it properly. I don't know where to find the rules and regulations on something like that.
Most shippers here have a permit issued by the U.S. Department of Agriculture that allows them to self-inspect prior to shipping to the mainland. In addition to that, California scrutinizes shipments from Hawaii very, very closely. But in most cases, we don't have much of a problem. If someone doesn't have a permit to ship, they can take their shipment down to the USDA office and have it personally inspected there by the USDA inspector prior to getting it shipped. So there is a protocol to follow. And that's primarily because Hawaii, being a tropical environment, hosts a number of different pests that are unique to Hawaii and not found on the mainland. And California, being such a large agricultural state, is very strict in enforcing their regulations.
You're shipping it in or out, and every state has their own regulations and rules. So having a centralized place, I mean, there's not really one, because if you're shipping from Florida to Hawaii or Hawaii to Florida, you know what I mean? So HGOA kind of does a lot of that regulation, but it's really hard to always get a clear thing, and it can depend on what's going out even, right? And what those rules and regulations are. So I would say that one's a hard one, but depending on who your shippers are, and if they're like from out of state coming in, have them work with their local or if they have any questions, they can contact HGA, I believe, and get some help. I hope that was helpful.
It depends on what is shipping. If we cut flowers, you
Yeah.
have to talk to USDA. And if you're shipping potted plants, you have to talk to Hawaiian Department of Ag, yeah? So, yeah.
Yeah, Hawaii has a certification process where the state of Hawaii inspects certified nurseries that are allowed to ship their products directly to the continental U.S., with their own permit stamp. And that's governed by, again, state of Hawaii and not USDA. Glenn, I know that I wanted to try and ask a question myself. I know that a number of people have asked about new varieties and everything else, and of course, as growers, we're always concerned about it. And I've been listening to Dr. Amore, and a couple of years ago, they had done some experiments in terms of speeding up the process between getting a plant from a flask to getting it out of a flask. The presentation I saw most recently said the normal time is about 3 years from the time they're able to put a clone or a hybrid into a flask until it's getting it out of it. But then some research being done under her guidance has shown that they can reduce that time by 50% or even 65%. Anything update on that, Tessie?
We have a thesis defense coming up later this month, and it will be recorded, and defense will be made available via Zoom. So the student will present about that.
This is really exciting because that really reduces the time between a decision being made for a cultivar to when we can actually have it in commercial production. Right now, we're talking about 10 to 15 years in the horizon. Conceivably, we can get down to 5 to 7 years, and that's extraordinarily exciting for the industry.
So do you expect having like really low to no availability in the next few years until the clean plants could grow back, or?
So availability of ginger?
Yeah.
No, ginger can grow with the viruses. It takes a long time to either reach mortality, and oftentimes they don't even die. They just become less productive, which sometimes it turns out is a good thing because the flowers get smaller, which sometimes you want smaller flowers for arrangements. So the expectation is there's going to be availability of red ginger. We just want to make it easier to grow that by having clean, healthy plants that don't look so bad. I know as a farmer, it doesn't feel good to have a yellowed, unhealthy looking plant. They want nice, tall, beautiful red ginger. So you got your plants, or you got your flowers, they'll keep coming, don't worry. And what I forgot to mention, going back there, we don't have viricides for these viruses. We're almost guaranteed to not get viricides. They don't exist in a way that's as effective at a confidence level that you would want to use them as much as other pesticides. So the expectation to clean a plant of the virus, other than through tissue culture, you can't just use a viricide as a pesticide, yeah. So.
Okay, and then you were mentioning for the tea leaf plants too. Is that something that you think, or what is?
Will you have clean ginger or clean tea?
Yeah.
That I'm not working on as much. That is a project that's being done by HARC. They're the ones who have the clean plants. I don't expect them to produce a lot very quickly unless they've got a big grant. So in terms of availability but for the leaf, you'll continue getting the leaf too. Don't worry, if you're a florist and you're worried about not getting red ginger or tea, you're gonna have plenty of access to it, so yeah.
Thank you. Russell, you guys may have to consider a ginger and tea conference later on. Seems like there's a lot of interest in it.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
Let's see, other questions?
What are 5 that I've had success growing and then shipping? Okay.
Well, I have one on my neck. Lysianthus. I definitely think Lizzies are fantastic. If you have the right growing conditions for them, they are fantastic. And one of the things that's the best about them is that there isn't any local pest pressure. That's awesome. So definitely Lizzies. They have like a 3-week vase life. They can substitute for a rose easily. A lot of times they'll even have better shading than a rose will have. I mean, I've been wearing this since 4 a.m. this morning, and it still looks great. And I cut its head off yesterday. So I mean, there you go. Lizzies, second. Zinnias, I know. Zinnias get a bad rap out there sometimes. I know. I know the florists who like them and the ones that don't like them. But here's the deal with a zinnia. You can get shading in a zinnia that can tie an entire arrangement together like no other flower. I mean, maybe some tropicals, but if we're talking temperates. So zinnias, here's the thing I love about zinnias too, because I'm all about edibles, is you can eat zinnias. And so, and they just go off like crazy. So you have so many flowers for one plant, it's just insane. I have some really great plants going on right now too that have been bred recently. They were literally like $3 to $5 a seed. But I'm collecting those seeds just so we have some more shading going on for weddings and things like that. So zinnias, Lysianthus, mums. I have to put mums in there. I love mums. Who doesn't love mums? They're so good. Every great color. The bad news is there's only a couple breeders in the United States who sell cuttings for us farmers to grow them from, and the biggest one stopped selling to Hawaii last year. Bummer, I know. So, and I talked to the owner even. I was pretty upset. And I was like, no way. I'll ship them to my son in Oregon, and he could ship them to me. And they said, nope, all Hawaii people, you're gone. But, if you know other farmers, people on the mainland are still sending them to us. So we've got that. And we've been chatting within the islands with different growers about sharing what we have for that. So mums, fantastic vase life. Oh, here's the great thing about mums. They're growing in the months when we don't have dahlias. So there you go. You've kind of got, and in Hawaii, what's really cool is we get mums 3 times. We get them in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring. So you get 3 flushes. Your best flush is in the fall, right about now, and then they're fantastic again at Christmas. Not as good, but still good, and then you get them again in the spring. The other thing that I really like, we were talking about greenhouses, and a lot of people think, oh, if you have a greenhouse. So we have a new fancy greenhouse that we received a grant for. We're very thankful, but you front the money on that bad boy till it's built and checked off. And the thing about greenhouses for temperate flowers is a lot of times they're just way too hot. So then you need shade. You also need to irrigate. There's just a whole thing that goes along with that. But mums, my new thing, mums in a greenhouse, they cook. They do really good. And then what happens is you get a bigger flush in that winter and the spring because they had that kind of warmth and protection there. So that's awesome. Was that 3? Dahlias, definitely dahlias. Top crop for me, dahlias. I already said that. Here's another fun fact. You can eat the tubers. So if things go really bad, you can eat your own tubers if you want to. But the thing that I love about dahlias, I had over 800 varieties like a year ago. That's how into dahlias I am. And the thing that's fantastic about them is we can ship in the tubers from the mainland. We can also ship in cuttings from growers like ball, seed, or something like that. And then you're increasing your crop production right away, which is fabulous. Dahlias are awesome. That's 4. One last one. Oh, snaps. I have to say snapdragons. Here's the thing about snaps in Hawaii. 365-day growth. You plant a plant. I literally have planted plants, and I am getting flowers off of them for an entire 12 months. I mean, where else do you get that much bang for your buck? And you can get, these days I don't even really start snap seeds anymore. I just ship in trays. And I get, 288 little tiny plugs for literally $30. I plant those guys out, and I probably, sell, I don't know, $30 to $50 worth of flowers off of every single plant in a year's time. I mean, that's a really good investment. And they're edible. Yeah, so there you go. There's 5.
If I am a florist from the mainland, when should I place an order with you to be respectful? If I need something in a certain time frame, what's the general protocol?
Depends, yeah. If I have the product, and depends where you are, I can ship the state of Hawaii by FedEx. I will ship everything by FedEx or UPS. In state of Hawaii and West Coast, it'll get you the next day. And of course, going to the East Coast, it'll be 2 days by FedEx. Yeah. So also depends on availability, with season. Of course, now summertime, we get most of it, yeah. And of course, we cannot supply everything, right? Yeah. I know a lot of people are asking for white right now and pink, you know. Where is Sue's? I saw Sue. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. And then also have Lois, yeah. Just now we're doing a farm tour. She sneak out and go to a special plot, and she found one special plant. They're asking me, when can I have the flower? You know, asking Tessie, when can we have the plant? You know, so it takes time. Yeah, it takes time, but we are working on it. But shipping is pretty easy. If the flower is available, we'll ship it anytime. 1 day, 2 days, you'll get the flowers. Yeah, not a problem.
If I could comment on that question too. Right now, we're coming out of a recovery period from COVID. Production was down. The market's starting to expand. And I think we're in more of a seller's mode right now. Again, today at noon, you saw the fact that halfway through the week, we're sold out. We have no more flowers to ship. I tell my customers that if I were you, I would place my order the latter part of the week prior to the week that you need it. Traditionally, harvests occurs on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday here, delivered to a consolidated spot. Sunday through Wednesday or so, they're being shipped. If you want your order filled, get it in the week before, and such that your order has a priority. Your salesperson can make special notes, make sure that the order gets filled as appropriate. Again, it's one of those situations where there've been times in the past where our supply was so good that on Friday we used to have a fire sale and ship out whatever we could at a discounted price. We're not in that time frame right now. Right now, demand exceeds supply, and so we want to satisfy our customers. So my recommendation to customers is to get your order in early. Make sure you've got a good relationship with your salesperson. Let them do their job to make sure your order gets filled that following week. I'm sure that in time it'll switch, and I think our growers will be able to produce more. And we're always trying, but it takes time. As we talked about lead time for new production, new varieties, and it's true even when you want to expand production. It doesn't happen overnight or just in one season. It happens over several years because it's a rotational crop. So I know that Greenpoint's expanding. I know that Pacific Flora Exchange is expanding. I know that Puna Flower Power is expanding as rapidly as we can. But again, it's just a process that we have to go through. And so get your order in early, and we'll do the best we can to satisfy them.
Okay, we have a question.
This question's for Orville. Are there any native plants that you are particularly excited about for the floral industry, or anything that you found would be interesting to us?
So I know we kind of communicated earlier, kind of like last year. One that I could think of as a filler would be Panicum thorism. So it's a 50-day crop. So that's grass. That could probably be a substitute to pampas grass or something. So you could dry them also.
We're currently using a few ferns. Kupu kupu holds up really well. And then obviously the palapalai for lepo'o. But I just was curious if there's any other things that you found to share.
Carex is another one that I'm thinking, but the problem with Carex is it can cut you. If we can find a way to remove the serrated edge of the Carex, that could be used as a. And I've made like similar to a tea leaf rose. I've made Carex roses, like this small. So you may be able to use it in that way. So.
What was the herbaceous one in front of the lagoon? Remember with the flower spikes?
Oh yeah. Another one. As another feeder. So because native Hawaiian plants, they're not showy, so they're more of like what do you call this? They complement the the star of the show. So Veo Veo or what's this? Chenopodium oahuense has this green panicle spike. So that's another filler flower that I could think of. And then there's another one that smells like butter, though. Shidia, it's in the carnation family. Yeah, because Maui Nui Botanical Gardens, they've used it for lei. So I think it can be used as a filler.
Thank you.
All right. Great. Joanna.
I think for me, I've been in this position 2.5 years, and I'm not a florist, so understanding the trends and how they come about. Do they come about quickly? Is it gradual? For how long they stay? I know it probably varies a lot, but I know pampas grass, for example, will they just change quickly? Can really help from my side and the production side of things. So to me, I'm very curious as to how long these trends last, how they come about, if it's just too variable to really say.
Any florists out there want to take a stab at it?
Anything white does not go out of style. Had my shop makes 10 years. We will always have white, like brides and grooms and couples and all white. Blush and peach also do not seem to be going out of style anytime soon. So trends come through. I know we've seen the last couple of years coming up yellows and greens, but for every wedding that we get, and our shop does a pretty good volume, every wedding that there's a yellow and a green, there's 4 or 5 that are blush white or blush white and peach. So there are trends, but there's still a very strong plateau of very traditional.
Lots of heads nodding in agreement.
Seems like.
Well, and then back to eucalyptus. You can no longer, like anything in the myrtle. So foliages are hard to come by no matter what. And if you're a florist, you can't use all flowers. It's just too much. You need to balance that out. And Uke has fantastic vase life. You can't ship it in anymore as a cut. So like for me, every stem, that's why I ask everybody, what's your minimum stem length? I'm literally selling 12-inch stems right off the plant because I can't grow it fast enough. So Uke will.
It does seem one of those things that will be forever.
And there's so many varieties. I think I have almost about 20 varieties now on our farm, and so you get a really big variation there in that Uke too. So and it grows it's year round. Yeah, it checks every box.
This is kind of a question for everybody. I wanted to know your thoughts on the myrtle ban and if we're going to take any steps necessary to start producing more plants from the myrtle family here commercially, since we can't get it anymore, because I do miss waxflower and all of the really nice big silver dollar eucalyptus. And I do know that Russell has some starts and we have some at our shop, but I know it's going to take a long time to fully grow, but is that a goal in the future? Yeah.
We do have a grant for eucalyptus, trialing them locally. We're right now trialing 3 species that we just happened to have seed in before the ban went into effect. We've been trying to find ways to bring in other species to trial and produce locally. It's been a challenge to do legally, so we're kind of holding off on that and working with what we have in the state already. We have some data coming up. There's some that look really good. Silver Dollar is one that's been consistently performing well. I'm not sure what the timeline is going to be scale-up wise in terms of producing enough of it. Other Myrtaceae, I know Hannah's done a lot of work. She has a huge collection on Maui of different import replacement plants. Maybe Hannah, do you want to kind of chat about those?
So before I started in this position, there was import replacement plant collection that we are growing and maintaining at the Kula Research Station. So we do have a lot of different myrtles. We even have some fun, funky Proteaceae stuff like Grevillea, moonlights or red hooks. So we do have those plants, which is good, and we're maintaining them. And we do plan in the future, hopefully, to do more trialing, just collect more data to see, okay, which of these Myrtaceae import plants, like foliage or fillers, are susceptible to the rust. And we want to gather that information because we don't want to just distribute stuff that might be susceptible to the rust and affect your farm. But we will hopefully collect more data, do more trialing, and distribute more plant material in the future. It just takes a little bit to grow them, give them the right nutrients and love, and then make cuttings until they're rooted. But stay tuned, because we will be providing more plant material soon.
I just want to put in a plug, sorry, Russell, that all of these things do take a lot of resources and money, and that's always kind of the limiting factor. So, and grants are getting harder and harder to get, and we hire lower and lower staff. So these are things that if you like these types of programs, want to see them, you can just show your support and try and get Ledge to help us also show their support. So
that's a great point, Joanna. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Because exactly, if we don't have the support or the funding for that, it's really difficult for us to maintain those plants, and then because that takes soil, resources, fertilizer, water, pots, all the things. So we do really need help and support, testimony to put these programs together.
Where's a good place to do that?
That's a great question. HFNA would be a good place to start. What are some other places? Where else can
During an election year, this is a great time to kind of talk to politicians, and they're hungry for votes. So saying agriculture is a priority, saying that this is your industry, it's a local industry, and you want support. This is kind of the time to squeeze them, I think, in terms of that. I wanted to give a plug. Thank you, Dr. Amore, for reminding us. So all of us who are involved in the eucalyptus grant will be having farm days, showing kind of the plants that we've been growing, talking a little bit about what we've seen and some pros and cons, and then also giving away plants of the things that have grown best for us. So I think we're planning late spring probably for those. They'll be on several islands, so kind of keep an ear out for that, and we'll get you info. The other thing I was going to say in terms of the rust itself that caused this ban, we have the rust at the Kauai Research Station. The ohia seedlings that the Invasive Species Council grows up get it pretty often, unfortunately. I haven't seen any of it, though, on our eucalyptus trial, which is pretty close by. We've seen other things on some species, but none of the rust so far. So we're cautiously optimistic that these will not be another host for the rust to spread.
I had sorry, I'm really loud and I have a lot of questions. Just for everyone, I guess, in the industry, what should we be asking of our governance that would help ag? Because we always are hearing our growers need more support. What does that look like to everyone? What should we be pushing for, and what would help? And I think this applies to not only our state, but the entire, the United States. What would help our industry as far as, giving them help? What would that look like?
Well, representing, Hawaii County, we hear from the industry groups and the researchers about concerns. I mean, talking about that Myrtaceae one, Russell, didn't we support that a project?
Yeah. We gave away 600 plants.
Okay,
on Big
so
Island.
yeah, so
I
it
see
was
some
a
faces that are
small
growing them.
project, compared to what could have been a statewide thing. But so we're working with the extension staff in that case when they submitted a proposal. But you can talk to your council members. I'm going to say council members, to express some of your concerns about agriculture, whatever situations or issues that is concerning you, and usually it'll trickle down to those who are the foot soldiers like me, and my director would then say, we have a situation, can you go look into it, and then I will then address it with the organizations or the researchers and see how we can support agriculture. Hawaii County has made the move, which I'm not sure is the first time. It could be the first time, but when we're talking about county extension agents, it's finally come back to us that we're going to support two half positions for extension agents on this island, and CTAHR will cover the other half for the two agents. So it's, you know, it's, thank you. Thank you. We haven't put out the money yet. But, you know, the thing is, we hear a lot of concerns. There's been the pressure. We took a survey of producers early part of this year, and overnight, 260 responses came back. And one of the highest priority was the need for extension agents, which is why Hawaii County made this move. Now, the other thing I'd like to ask, this person on this panel is Warren, because Maui County has established a Department of Agriculture, and I know he's not the one in charge of it, but if he can share with the rest of the group about, you know, the thoughts of this Department of Agriculture for Maui.
Okay, I don't know if you're aware, but the County Department of Agriculture was established by during the last election. It was voted on by the community. It's something that they wanted. I'll be frank, Maui County Farm Bureau was opposed to this. And the reasons why was we were concerned about further regulations on another level. The Hawaii Department of Agriculture has the regulatory powers. We're dealing with agriculture. So we did get some modifications. The county council and the mayor agreed that this department will be more for advocacy. They're looking at hiring grant writers to help our farmers and ranchers, because that is one of the biggest obstacles for our producers. I mean, you know, you're busy 24 hours a day, right, trying to produce, so you don't have time to write grants. So that's one of the things they're attempting to do. And for your information, I was on the selection committee for the new department, chair and deputy chair. We were very impressed with the person we selected. She's from Molokai. She has a diverse background. Her name is Kali Arce. Our deputy is Weston Yap, who was employed with the Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We think they'll make a good team. Kali has been busy meeting with different organizations, meeting with farmers, ranchers. And so I think, you know, it may be a step in that, we're hoping it's a step in the right direction, where it'll give focus to our producers. The problem we have with the Hawaii government, Department of Agriculture, and, you know, my experience with, you know, ever since I've been involved with Farm Bureau is that everybody and our legislators and our governor, they all say they want to support, as I mentioned before, they want to support agriculture, but that hasn't happened, in my opinion, at the level it needs to be. And I think that's where the community needs to get together, and that's why I mentioned Farm Bureau. We will be having our annual Hawaii Farm Bureau convention on October 25th and 26th on the island of Oahu. This is where we do discuss what priorities we would like to see funded at the state legislature. I know Eric mentioned that he'll be attending, and I think that's where, again, we need all sectors of agriculture to pull in the same direction. Too often, we're opposing. We're in opposite positions. Unless we can do that, and hopefully, you know, I'm really glad Eric said he'll be attending. I mean, I've been trying to get him to attend our meeting for years, so I'm really glad. And again, I think by doing that, you get the attention of the legislators. The biggest problem I see, even our Maui County Council, is that their intentions are well. They mean well. But they don't quite understand the intricacies and the daily problems our producers face. You know, they have this vision, but to me, a lot of times it's not the reality. And that's why I think it's important Hawaii Farm Bureau and the Cattlemen's Association on their own they have days with the legislators. Hawaii Farm Bureau, we did our Ag Day. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we couldn't go to the Capitol. Hopefully this upcoming session, we'll be able to return to that. But the key thing I think is you need to develop that personal relationship with your representative, with your senator, and even on the congressional level. For Maui, we have been working closely with Representative Kahele. Unfortunately, he'll be leaving. So we've been talking with Joe Tokuda. We have a good relationship with Senator Schatz. And the other thing on the federal level, as you may be aware, they are currently working on the new farm bill. And that's where we're trying to make changes. I get back to the excess deer problem we have on Maui and Molokai. We tried to get an NRCS grant. It was focused on feral pigs. And so through the conservation districts, we are now trying to model the farm bill to change its focus not only on feral pigs, but on all feral animals. And for Hawaii, that may be make a huge difference. So it's trying to mold and change, and again, having that personal relationship with your policymakers. And again, as long as we're pulling in the same direction, I think that's key. Because again, if we don't do that, why should we be all fighting ourselves? We all understand where we want to go with agriculture. And so we all need to be going in the same direction. And, really educate our policymakers. We're getting a tough time at the legislature right now because a lot of them have no idea what production agriculture is. And so that's my advice.
Thank you, Warren.
Last week I was on a panel at the Ag 2022 convention, and this similar question was asked of us, and there is one subject that I can speak to that I don't have a personal interest in, but a number of people in this room have a vested interest in. And this is the bill to allow lessees the opportunity to extend their leases. The Ag Park leases were for 55 years, and most of them are coming close to the end of that lease term. There have been a number of successful farmers that have these leases which are coming due in the very near future. The legislature, in its wisdom, passed a bill to allow these farmers to extend their leases for another 25 years if they make the capital investment to improve their farms. And again, it's a way of keeping our agriculture alive. And as I say, there are a number of people in this room that have leases along this. When you went to Greenpoint Nurseries today, I'm sure you saw a number of underutilized farms there. Right now, we have a situation where we have underutilized leases, and the governor vetoed this because the Department of Agriculture, our own Department of Agriculture, says no, they want to give new farmers the opportunity to bid for these leases. Now, if that's allowed to happen, a place like a Greenpoint, where they've made amazing amount of development and plantings there, is going to be up for auction. What beginning farmer is going to be able to bid for a farm like that? The only one that is capable of carrying that on is the 2 generations of Tanois that have built that. And that same is true of my brother's nursery. The same is true of David Shigi's farm in the Pahoa Ag Park. This is something we hope that the new legislature will continue to repass again, and let's hope the next administration has the wisdom to allow that to occur so we can perpetuate our agriculture industry. Without the nurseries like Greenpoint, Pacific Floral Exchange, and Shigi Nursery, where would we be in this industry today? So we need the support of all of us who are residents of Hawaii to make sure you pressure your legislators to support that bill. Let's pressure the government and the new administration to pass that bill. This is very important. This is almost the lifeblood of our industry here. They're the bedrock of our industry. If they're gone, where are we going to be? Thank you.
You know, I've mentioned the policymakers and the legislators, but the two key departments that we also need to work with is Department of Agriculture and DLNR. And to our friends at the end of the table, we also need to strongly support CTAHR.
Yeah. Thank you.
So the position that I'm in, Russell's and Hannah are in, as well as I think 7 other positions, were all funded by the legislature a few years ago because of lobbying by local agriculture producers and our dean at the time from UH. And so created 10 new agent positions, but they also, because they were so excited about it, put in funds for variety trials, because that was something that kept coming up. We need innovation, we need new plants. And that was a much smaller and more finite amount of money, but it did fund a bunch of projects that have then kind of gone on and grown that way. Mostly, unfortunately, in edible crops for this crowd, but things that could certainly be directed in other ways. If there is something specific that you want and need, I mean, talk to us, but also tell the legislature directly. And I think, especially in an election year, they can work with you to get something at least on the table, potentially.
Thank you, James.
Thank you all. I think this was fantastic. It was way, way more than I expected, and it swayed this way sometimes and swayed that way, but we all came to the middle. I think that was great. Thank you for the panel. Let's give them a round of applause, and I think they did fantastic in all of their areas of expertise. And I am so proud of you guys out there. Wow, the questions, you guys did your homework. I mean, I thought we would go through a while of just silence, but it nonstop. The questions kept coming, and the answers and the dialogue was really, really good. So we're capturing this on camera, so we're really looking forward to watching it again and seeing the dialogue. So right now, we're kind of coming to the conclusion of our forum right now. And I want to first, on behalf of the Board of Directors of Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association and our membership, thank you so much for joining in. I want to also thank our moderator, Mr. Glenn Sacco, extraordinaire. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, Glenn.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for participating, and have a very nice evening in Hilo.